Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you for registering for today's webinar and taking the time up your busy schedules to look at Revizto and next generation BIM coordination. So first of all, I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Rhys Lewis and I'm Business Development Director here at Revizto for UK, Europe, Middle East and Africa. So yeah, hopefully you can hear me okay and that you can see my screen. I'll just run a few checks in a few minutes just to make sure that everyone is into the meeting as we would expect. So I've actually been with Revizto. I'm probably one of our newest members. I've been here for about 5 months and it's a really exciting time to be here. Prior to that, I spent just over 5 years with Arab Consulting Engineers in their software technology team. And before that, I was with one of Autodesk's largest resellers in Europe. So I've been doing this for just over 11 years, providing innovative technology to the AEC world, which I find very, very exciting. Okay, so first of all, I'll try and keep the webinar short, sharp, and concise and to the point. Let's just make sure that everyone is into the meeting okay, first of all. So if you're not familiar with the GoToWebinar interface, you can change some of your settings. So you can switch your audio and you can comment and ask questions throughout the course of today's webinar, which I'll try my best to answer as many as I can towards the end of the session. So first of all, if you just want to ensure that you have your correct audio settings, so you can select whether you use your telephone or your mic and speakers. So if you can't hear me, just check that. And also if you have questions, I'd love to hear them. So please just type those into the questions dialog in the GoToMeeting interface. So I'm just going to test that. So why don't you just type in the name of the city that you're based out of? And I'll wait for a few of those responses to come through just to make sure you can actually hear me. So if you just type in where you're coming in from, that would be great. Perfect, so we've got representation from all over the place, which is great. Cardiff, London, Bangkok, excellent. Right, so that's working. Everybody can hear me and see my screen. So let's get to it. So some of you may be aware of Revizto, some of you may be not aware of Revizto. So I'd like to start to just position what it actually is and a little bit about the background of the technology. So the idea really was to bring gaming technology to the AEC space. So that's architecture, engineering and construction, and allow project teams to better collaborate, communicate and coordinate on a project. So high level, Revizto is a coordination and a collaboration platform that integrates with virtual reality. Amongst our customers include some of the names on the screens here, so you may be part of that organization, you may be working with some of these organizations, and that's just a snapshot of our typical customer. So we now have over 60,000 global unique users, and Revizto servers again are scattered all over the world and available in 7 different languages. So the problem today, the first conversation I have with a potential user or users of Revizto itself is just to talk to me a little bit about their current process, just to identify what the challenges are and actually discuss the problems. So the traditional coordination cycle, what does that look like for you? So what I hear a lot of is that this process can be very, very complicated, which is confusing because you have different consultants who use different technology and have different preferences and want to store their data in different places, in different file formats. So this multidisciplinary communication can become confusing and cause delay and increase project costs. So if you're involved in a project, how do you create an issue? How do you assign an issue to somebody? How do you notify them that you've updated the issue that's been assigned to you? Do you wait until the next design review meeting? Do you send them an email with a screenshot or print out a PDF and then send that across and wait for them to respond? Do you have to upload the latest version of the federated Navisworks model and then wait for the other consultant to do what they need to do? how do you comment, communicate, track all of this can be very, very difficult because people are doing different things, trying to achieve the same thing using different processes, different technology, and it can just become confusing. So Revizto was specifically designed to tackle this problem head on and really simplify this process so you can get back on to delivering more of your projects on time. On that, let me just ask a question. So what I'd like to do is just ask everyone now to select one of the options on the screen. So how do you currently manage and track design and coordination issues in your projects? So if you just select one of the options onto the screen, and hopefully I've tried to include as many as I can, just to get a feel for what people do today. So we'll just wait for those to come in, a few more votes, and we'll be there. So are you using Navisworks and creating viewpoints and then sending a screenshot in an email? Do you print out a PDF and mark that up and send that to somebody, or bring that along to your design review meeting? And then how are you tracking all of that? Are you managing that in an Excel spreadsheet and then maybe collating all of that information, if you've answered all of the above, and bringing that to your design review meeting? So it looks like the majority have voted. So let's just close that. Take a look at some of the results. So yeah, as I guessed, a lot of you are doing what's listed on the screen, which is typical, and this is coming back to the traditional coordination cycle. That just happens to be the way things are done. Well, we've got some good news. We're going to welcome you to the future of the next generation of BIM coordination, and that is Revizto. So hopefully you'll really like what you see throughout the course of today's presentation. So let's just get back to Revizto. This workflow diagram I'll probably come back and forth to. So Revizto itself becomes your central collaboration platform that can be fed with all sorts of different types of data sets, geometry, clashes, BCF. So what typically you'd have is a range of geometry linked in either from Revit, AutoCAD, a federated Navisworks model. We also support Civil 3D, SketchUp, and ArchiCAD. So on your project, you may have a range of consultants using different technology. Revizto allows you to bring all of those together into a single application, a single window with all of your project information. So that's our geometry. We can also import all of your clashes, your clash report from Navisworks and in from Celebri via BCF, if, depending on what model checking software you're using. And we aren't replacing any of these tools. We're working as a complementary product. We also support FBX and IFC. And once you've exported your project to Revizto, this can then be shared through the cloud or a shared location with your project colleagues. They can then open up Revizto on any application, any device, open up Revizto on any device that they have the application installed and collaborate. So they could be using a PC, a Mac, an iPad, and with a one-click export, you can also view your model and clashes in virtual reality. So we directly support the Vive and Oculus Rift, and there are other virtual reality domes that we integrate with as well, like the Igloo, for example. So lots of reasons why, and hopefully these will be covered as I show you the software. I'll just leave you read through those. For me, most of the feedback I get from our customer base is that Revizto is user-friendly. You don't have to be a technical expert to go in and engage with a very technical model. And it creates a single source of truth, which again, I'll probably mention a number of times throughout this presentation. So there's our introduction. Let's get back to the software itself. So I'm just going to change my screen here and open up a Revit model. So once you've installed Revizto and the plugins, you will have the toolbar here, Revizto 4 available in Revit, for example. So I'm not technical in Revit or Navisworks, So the first thing I want to do is export my project to Revizto. So under the tab here, we've got a number of options. One of those is export. So I select that. I'm then presented with a list of things that I can export. And this will include rooms, sheets, levels. I can take the materials through if they've been applied, phases, grids. I can also take through all of the sheets as well and select what format I want those in, either as a vector, as an image. And this will also take through any linked files. So I hit export. I've done this one already. In the interest of time, we will wait and watch. Once I've done that one-click export, I can then open up the project in Revizto, anywhere on any device that I have the software installed. So I could open up this model now on an iPad, for example, or in virtual reality, and so on. The first thing I'm going to do, which I think is important to mention right away, is change my preferences and the navigation. So I can go in here and fine-tune a few things. For me, I'm going to use the gaming navigation mode, which is easy, if you like. You can also stick with Revit if that's what you're used to, or Navisworks, depending on what that user is familiar with. For me, I'm going to use game and go back to the 3D view. So to navigate around this model now, literally with a few keys on my keyboard, I can start moving and exploring this particular project. So with my mouse and a few keys, I can dive straight into the building with ease. So again, coming back to that point of not being a technical user, a lot of what I hear from the people I speak to is typically on a project, if there's 50 people, a low percentage of that team are Revit, ArchiCAD or Navisworks experts. So it's reliant on one of those people being available to navigate them through the model. With Revizto, it engages all of the project team because the software is so intuitive and easy to use. So I'm in fly mode at the moment. I can switch to walk mode at the bottom here, and then that locks me to that particular floor. I've got a number of tools here that I can start using. So let's just take a measurement here. So I can select our ruler key and I can go through and just start taking measurements very easily. Maybe I want to know the distance between the floor and the ceiling, for example. So there we go, it's 2.740 meters. I can take minimum distances. So if I select that column and that panel, for example, that will show me the minimum distance between those two. And that's displayed there. I can get a bit more specific if I really want to and move these ends to any surface and get that distance. So that's the 3D data come through as I'd expected. Now the big difference about Revizto to some other visualization tools is this just isn't a visual model. This is information visualization. So if I double click on a property, all of that metadata has come through from the Revit model as well, so I can actually go in and view all of the data behind that particular property, which is obviously really, really useful and information that we need during the project. And maybe the Revizto project is one of the end deliverables to your client then to use to operate that facility. So let's go back home. Actually, just check that all the 2D information has come through as well because I exported all of those sheets. So all of my sheets have been listed here. I can see those listed one by one. And if I double click on a floor plan, for example, that then opens up the floor plan. So I can go in here and navigate around as I'd expect. It's also allowing me to jump to any linked sheets and go back. I can also jump to the 3D view from here just by double-clicking anywhere on that 2D sheet, and that will take me back to that exact spot in the 3D model. And on this sheet itself, if I select the 7 issues at the top of the screen, that's now identifying and showing me where there are live issues on that sheet and color coding them based on their status. And I'll come on to this shortly. I'll just hide them for now. Something else I can do, which is really powerful, is overlay the 2D sheet in the 3D model. So if I select this green icon, if you just watch the screen, because this happens very quick, that's now overlaid the 2D sheet in the 3D model, which is so powerful for a range of reasons. So if we just zoom in a little here and stick the sheet in place. So the sheet knows where it lives because it's come in directly from Revit, and I can start dragging the 3D model, if you like, through the 3D model through the 2D sheet. So I can perform an additional check between the 3D model and the 2D sheets. So this allows me to perform that additional check, but also maybe explain to a non-technical person that the 3D geometry has derived from the 2D information, and lots of other useful features as well. I'll actually show you one whilst we're on this point. So if I select all my sheets and maybe type in, let's have a look at one of the wall sections and open that up. Again, these dynamic overlays have been set up automatically for me, so there's no additional work that I need to do. If I select this green icon again, that's going to do the same thing for me, but this time it's allowing me to check this particular wall detail. So I can go through here and do the same thing, which is great. So I may want to create a new issue from that, or I can create a viewpoint, and that will now be saved as my viewpoint, which I'll show you next. So let's go home, back to my home viewpoint. So I'm just going to run through some of the things that have come through from Revit. We mentioned viewpoints, so if I select viewpoint, I can see they're all listed here on the right-hand side. So I can move through these one by one. Great way to navigate through this particular building. And on the right-hand side, there are the viewpoints I've created directly within Revizto. So there's the viewpoint we just created. And if I go a little further up, there's a viewpoint that I've created and actually color-coded object categories in the scene, which I'll come back to shortly, and so on. Another really nice tool is for navigating around is that all of the room data has come through from Revit as well. So if I select on room here, all of the rooms are listed on the right-hand side, and I can browse through those one by one, just select the relevant room. That then takes me to the center point of that room. If I know the room name, then I can type in the name of the room, double click, and that takes me to the center of that room for me to look around. Now, if you're using Navisworks just to navigate around the model, that's difficult to do anyway. What I hear a lot of users telling me is that they find themselves getting lost in a project if it hasn't been set up efficiently or correctly, especially in larger scale projects. So with Revizto, it's actually quite difficult to get lost, but if you do, very quickly you can find out where you are. So if I select our map icon, that's now going to show me exactly where I am in the project. So this is only a small example, but gets the point across. So that drop-in in the center is where I am. I can see the level I'm on, the rooms, data and grids has come through as well, so I can see all of that. And perhaps we're in a client presentation and we want to move to floor 38 in a residential tower, for example. So on the right-hand side, I double-click on the level I want to be moved to. Back into the plan view, then double-click on the drop-in, and I'm now back in the 3D model. So very, very simple to do. So navigating around the Revizto project doesn't require much technical experience or training at all. You don't have to be a Revit or a Navis or a Civil 3D expert to go in and explore this model. One or two final things I'd like to show you here is I can start cutting sections through this building. So I can just apply that maybe to this wall and very quickly go in here and start chopping up that model. With these and all of this I can do on a tablet, so that's a plane. I can create a section box and do a couple of things here as well. Make this bigger, smaller, just move the position of that. So very, very simple to do, which is important if you want to engage the whole of your project team. We can go in and also color code and isolate link files, objects, and phases. So within here, I've got everything showing. If I hide everything in the scene for now, maybe I only want to look at the mechanical equipment. So we'll bring that in, and I can actually color code this. So I can go in here and choose the color that I want that particular object or category family to be displayed as. I can actually go right into individual objects as well if I want to. Maybe we want to look at some of the ducts in here as well. So let's make those blue and make those visible. And some of the duct fittings, we'll do the same thing where we color code those. And I can take the same hex color as well if that's what I want to. And we'll put one more in there. Maybe we want to look at maybe some of the casework, and we'll make that a separate color. And bring that into the view as well. So a great way to visualize your model and go in and perform additional checks. So we've been asked for this for quite a while by some of our key clients. So I think the important thing to mention is our development roadmap is heavily driven by our customer demand. So the product is doing what our customers are asking. Maybe this is something I want to share with somebody so I can create a new issue, or just save that as a new viewpoint. Click on the plus icon, and that's now been saved, and I can call this whatever I want, and that's now saved. So whenever anybody else comes into the project, they'll see that in the viewpoints. So what I've done so far is exported my Revit model into Revizto. What we can do as well is that process gets done automatically. So if I go back to Revit, I have an export scheduler where I set up the schedule to run maybe at 8 o'clock every evening, so the latest version of that model is uploaded to Revizto. And I can select what it is I want to export back to Revizto. And under project, I can see it keeps a copy of all of the revisions as well. Because this model has come in directly from Revit, I can go in and look at phases as well. So I can take a look. If you set these up in Revit, then I can go through these one by one and use that filter to look at different phases that have been created, and go in here and mark that up, which I'll show you next. So a really, really powerful navigation tool, but the real powerful part of Revizto, in my opinion, is the issue tracker, which we're going to look at next. So let's talk about BIM Collaboration. With Revizto, you have the ability to manage and track all of your design and coordination issues in one environment. So if I select the issue tracker, you'll notice down the right-hand side here, there are issues that have been created previously. So we'll come back to these in a second. And these issues have been created in a number of different places. So if you've got Revizto installed on the plugins, it doesn't matter where you create an issue, whether that's in Revit, in Navisworks, in Civil 3D, in Revizto. They're stored in what I like to refer to as your single source of truth. So let's go back to our home view and create an issue. So we'll do that first of all in 3D in Revizto. So let's maybe take a section through the building here and go in and explore maybe we can do a couple of things here. Let's take, first of all, a measurement between the two walls to see if they comply with whatever regulations that we have for this building. So that's not quite wide enough. So I want to make a note of that and create an issue. And I can change the measurement there. So I've clicked on the plus button there, which is create a new issue. So we talked about this earlier on, and how do you do this currently. So I'm not going to create a viewpoint if I'm not in Navisworks. I'm not going to punch out a PDF if I'm in Revit and then redline that up and send that to somebody in an email and wait for them to respond. What I'm going to do now is actually mark up the model. So on the left-hand side here, I have my markup tool. So let's start annotating the model. So I can change the colors and the type and the size of the text and the arrows and all of that good stuff. But I'll leave you do that yourselves when you install the trial version of Revizto, and we'll just add some text there to say needs to be a minimum of 6 meters, for example. So we'll put that there. We can change the size of that very, very easily. And that is now my markup, if you like. I'm going to give it a name at the top here, so we'll call it room width, and I'm finished there, so I'm going to click done. Now what that's done is store that issue in the issue tracker, so it's given it its own ID 201. This issue is now intelligent, so it knows where it lives in the project. So if I click on 3D, that takes me right back to the 3D view of the model. And now I can see there are other issues that are displayed because I have the issues visibility switched on. If I click on 2D, that will now show me all of the 2D sheets that issue touches. This particular issue on this sheet is the blue one, and there are others on there as well. So I could double click on another issue and that will take me back to that issue in 3D. But let's just focus on the one we've just created because I need to action this. So I've created the issue. There's a few things I can do here now. So the first thing I want to do is actually action it. So I want to assign it to the architect on this project, who is maybe Armin. So Armin will now get an email. If he has Revizto open, it'll ping to notify him he's been assigned an issue. I want to assign a deadline to this to ensure it gets done by our next design review meeting. So I'll allow 2 weeks for that change to be made, for example. A bit lenient, but that's fine. I can add tags to this issue. So we'll add wall if it's there, and it is. So we'll just click on that, add, and that's been done. And maybe this is a critical issue on this project. So I want to notify 2 of the project managers when any change has been made or additional text is added. So if I type in Dave there and maybe another David, click done, they'll both get notified when any change is made. Each issue gets its own live messaging feed. So in here, I can do a number of things. So I can add text. Please amend ASAP, click send. And all of this now is happening in real time. So everyone associated with this issue will get notified when any change is made. So if I edit the markup, that'll get stored here as well. If I'm on my iPad and out on site because I'm maybe reviewing the status of the build, or I'm the contractor, I can actually take a picture with my iPad and assign that in the issue as well. I can attach additional documentation, a range of different file types. So maybe I want to attach this document and say refer to this guideline, for example. Click send, and now everyone in that issue can see all of that. They can double click on that document and they'll be able to open up that particular document, which is just an example, of course. So the list here on the left-hand side is my filter. So I can filter the issues in lots of different ways. I can filter by assignee. So maybe I want to see all of the issues that are assigned to the architect Armin on this project. Select that, and that list of however many is reduced to 2. So in our design review meeting, we can go through these issues and actually action them there and then, as opposed to wait for 2 weeks for that person who's taking the minute notes to respond. So I can actually ask Armin in the meeting, Armin, where are you with this, please? And then update the status to say it's in progress and we actually need to set the deadline to the end of the week. Click done and make a note to say as discussed. So this almost becomes your email chain, if you like. So you've got traceability and accountability in one place, coming back to the term I mentioned earlier on, my single source of truth. So at the top, I can filter here by ID number, I can filter by tag, I can filter by person, and so on and so forth. And I can get into lots more detail here, but I won't go through absolutely everything. I can filter by the clashes, sheets, and so on and so forth. The issues can be created in a number of different places. So those of you who are familiar with Navisworks, you'll notice this is actually, I ran a clash report in Navisworks earlier on this morning and imported a few examples. So this clash has come in directly from Navisworks. So I can go through here, I've assigned this to somebody and put a deadline against that as well. I mentioned, if we just look at the top issue that I just created, this issue is dynamically linked back to any of the authoring tools that you saw on my PowerPoint previously. So if I double click on an issue in Revizto, this knows where that issue is in Revit, Navisworks, AutoCAD. So I'm going to double click on that and I'll show you what has happened by bringing Revit back across onto this screen. So that's now taken me directly to that point in the Revit model of where that room issue is. So that's done a number of things. Just think to yourself, how many times have you received a screenshot from somebody that doesn't really mean a lot and it relates to maybe a duct in one of the ceiling voids on level 38? That just takes a lot of time to try and find out where that issue is. And because it takes a lot of time, the user may end up changing the wrong duct, for example. So that's caused delays, increases the amount of time that's spent on the project in total. What Revizto has done is with that single double click has taken me to that exact part of the model that I need to be in. So it just streamlines the communication process and make things clearer for the project team to understand. And you may not even be involved in the Revit or Navisworks model, but you can still go here in the issue tracker and see exactly what's going on and filter the issues by deadline perhaps, or look at my open issues and here's my to-do list for the day, and so on and so forth. Let's go back to 2D and create an issue in 2D. So we'll take a look at this sheet, for example, and maybe there's an issue with one of these windows. So same process, I click on the plus icon, position that, and then mark this up, add some text. We'll say wrong position, click done, give it a name at the top. Just call it window for now, click done. And again, that has now been tracked and logged in the issue tracker. So through the same process, this needs to be solved by next week. Assign that again to maybe Andrew and ask him to resolve by next week, please. Click send, and all of this is happening in real time. So if these people were online, they'd be able to see this and comment back here in the issue tracker, and I'd be able to see all of that instantly. So we've looked at creating issues in 3D and 2D and talked how they're dynamically linked back to the authoring tool. You can actually create an issue in the authoring tool as well. So if I go back to my 3D view within Revit, you can see at the top here, I've got new issue. So if I just scroll in here, for example, maybe we want to move the position of these solar panels to reflect the position of the sun. So if I click on new issue, same process. That's taking an image from the Revit model, and I can go through here and mark this up. Add some text. We call it this one. Now let's just put in there update position. Click done. Happy with that, and we'll say solar. At the top, click done. And they need to be changed because of a discussion we had with one of the consultants. Please change position as discussed in review meeting. Done. And update that with the deadline. Maybe this is a critical issue on this project, so we want to add some watches to that. So the two Davids here will also get notified when that is updated, changed, and so on. One thing I haven't shown you yet, if I go back to 3D, is we can actually set up a camera share session. and you can record a video directly within Revizto. This camera share session is what some of our customers are now using to have their design review meeting. So as opposed to getting everyone in the room with all of their marked up drawings and somebody driving Navisworks on the screen, what you can do with Revizto is anyone you invite to the project by clicking share, you can invite them in here and give them relevant permissions. So this is a demo project that some of you may be involved in after today's session, so you'll be given these access rights. I can set up the camera session. Anyone online I'll be able to invite into the model, and I know I'm presenting now via GoToWebinar, so there might be a very slight lag. With Revizto, you'll be able to see in real time exactly where I am in the model. The other interesting thing I can do here is give somebody control to navigate who may be in an office in Singapore, for example, or anyone else who's online. And in that meeting, I can actually go through the issues one by one and assign them in the review meeting in the model, so you don't have this delay of a couple of days or a week after the design review meeting where an Excel spreadsheet gets updated because 50 people have been sent an email with a to-do list or an NWD with all of the clashes. It all gets managed and tracked in this single environment. And again, coming back to one of my earlier points, it's so intuitive, easy to use. So this is a tool that's used for coordination and collaboration, but I see more of our customers actually using this for those non-technical Revit and Navisworks people to have that model out with them on their iPad, to discuss the model with clients. If they're a contractor, they want to take information when they're out on site and record that as well. So you've got this seamless workflow where everybody can be involved in the project, regardless of their skill set or technical experience. Revizto makes that a much, much easier and simpler process. Now, what's also really important to mention is I've got all of these issues here that I can now report on. So I can import and export via BCF as well, or I can generate a report directly from Revizto by clicking Export, and these can be exported out as a BCF or Excel. The smart way to do this, let's go to our workspace, is I can get a login when I purchase a collaborator license. So if I click on the reporting tool at the top here, this now opens up my workspace where I have access to manage my license, all of my projects, and create very detailed reports. So this particular project, let's create a new report for that. So what I can do here is give it a name, and we'll call this webinar test. I can select the time period, so we want to look maybe at project start date to current date, so that's everything. And I can get into as much detail as I want, so I can report on issues that have been tagged a certain name, or they may have been tagged by trade, or BCF, or whatever, it's up to you, or by assignee, so maybe I want to look at all the issues that have been assigned to a specific person or to a specific consultant. And I can lots of options, I suppose, to summarize there. What I want to do is just click Save, and this will generate this chart for me. So this is a relatively new project, and what I can see in this chart on the left-hand side is the total amount of issues, and they're listed down the right-hand side here with their ID, assignee, and the name. It also quite nicely color codes them for me, so I can see these here. There are, out of the 14, 10 issues are open, 4 are in progress, and the important one for that project coordinator or BIM coordinator is one of these issues has missed its deadline. So let's select that. I can see that that's 194, that's assigned to me coincidentally. So there's two things I can do from here. First of all, let's just go and take a look at that issue in Revizto. So it was 194, and yeah, I just need a bit more time on that one for now, so I'll extend the deadline. And I can see somebody's just come online as well, so I could invite them in to have that screen share. So I've just gone back because I'm actually involved with the project. I can select that ID, go into the project and update that accordingly. Let's generate a report now of these 14 issues. So there's a few things I can do here. I can either set up a regular delivery for a generic report for the whole project team that gets sent out every Friday at 2 p.m. for example, and click save, and that will then get done. I can set up a schedule to send to only the architects of all of their issues that have missed their deadline, or I can send a report immediately, choose what format I want that report in, click send now, and now I'll get an email if I put in my email address with the links to download the 3 different versions of those reports. So I have an example open already in PDF. So here's an older report that is related to this project that has now listed the report, the name, and if I scroll through this report, that has then listed out the issues one by one with all of the relevant information. So I had an interesting conversation with a consultant in London a few weeks back who generated a report very similar to this that had taken them half a day to generate. And that was because he had to collate information that was in lots of different places, in viewpoints and NWDs, screenshots, look at emails that have been sent back and forth, check the Excel spreadsheet to update the status, and he'd spent half a day. With Revizto, I've clicked on that button to print out the report, and I've had this 90-page document sent to me immediately. So the amount of time and confusion that's saved by using Revizto, it really does pay for itself very, very, very quickly. And I can export out an Excel spreadsheet or a chart and so on and so forth. So if I just come back into Revizto and go back to our view there, come home. So everything you've seen here, if I go back to my workflow chart, we like to think of ourselves as being open BIM, or interoperability is an important piece of what the AC space wants to do. So this chart here just identifies that we're not just specific to one vendor or one product. We like to try and allow our users to be able to import as much data and in different formats as possible, and then again share that in a range of different ways via different devices, because our clients are using different technology and have different preferences. So I'd like to think that Revizto ticks a lot of those boxes, and it's bringing all of that information together, creating a single source of truth in a user-friendly environment that even a non-technical person to use. So there is really no excuse not to collaborate using Revizto. So I'm going to stop there. I think I've shown you as much as I'd like to. I've probably not covered absolutely everything, but hopefully given you a good overview of what's available in Revizto today. What I'd also like to say is if you are interested in learning more, then this webinar is actually being recorded. So if you do have any questions, my details are on the screen now, but you will be sent a follow-up email to get your thoughts. So please do comment and either share your report and feedback directly with myself or my marketing team. Let us know what you'd like to see next in our next webinar, and any suggestions you've got for the product are always welcome. If you're interested in actually trialing the software, we do offer a trial license, and if you get in contact with myself, I can make sure your request gets dealt with relatively quickly. So I'd just like to say thank you for listening, and I'd like to open the floor up to questions now. So I can see there's been a few coming in. So if you just want to have a think about what you've seen and ask some questions, then I'd love to take those now over the next couple of minutes. So I'm just going to scroll through these and answer some questions. So please do ask away. So the first one is, will this webinar be recorded? Would like to share it with a colleague. So the short answer is yes. This will be hosted now on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to get access to that and share with your colleagues. Not a problem at all. How to hide a whole model? Well, if I go back in here to the objects, I've got some tools across the top here where I can get in and isolate levels or color code levels, so I can switch them all off, and maybe I just want to look at level 1 and color code that red, for example, or hide it, and that'll hide the whole model. I can go into linked files, so if I had any linked Revit files here, maybe there were 10 of them, I could actually go in and isolate those and color code them and get into the details of specific object categories. And I have a viewpoint here which shows some of that, where I have isolated parts of the model and then color coded certain elements. Lots of questions, great. Does it work on laptops, tablets, mobiles? Yes. So if I go back to my slide here, towards the bottom, which is hidden a little bit, you can see, so we have Reviztos available on PC, Mac, iOS and Android. In terms of tablets, our recommendation is you're probably using an iPad Pro or something with enough processing power to run the model that you're looking at. Don't forget, this is an information model, so all of that metadata is contained within the project. Are the hide tools available in version 4? Yes, they are. Still looking at some of these questions, so bear with me as I try and scroll through them. How well does this model work with huge projects? So we haven't found a limit with the size of model that we can handle. That really does come down to your processing power and graphics card that you have available. So some of our customers are working on huge models and running that absolutely fine. Good question here about licensing. So do all project stakeholders need to have a license to use it for a project? So with Revizto, you can share the project with your project team for those to collaborate and create issues and assign issues and update issues. If you wanted to give somebody access on a tablet, they'd need to download Revizto and log in. What you can do is actually export an exe, which is just a viewer, a free viewer that you can then share with somebody for them to open up and explore on their machine. I'll take one or two more questions. Revisions is another one, so you may have missed that earlier on. So Revizto keeps a copy of all of the revisions, so as you're updating your version of the model, then it would keep all of the revisions here and you can jump back to any one of those at any time. I'll take one more question. So somebody's mentioned about cloud and data on your own private server. So when you convert your Revit model, for example, to Revizto, that processing gets done on your local machine. Only when you click share, you've then got the option to share the project via a shared location of your choice, one of your own servers, or via the cloud. So that choice is up to you. And the cloud is actually AWS. So Amazon is what we use. It's all ISO accredited and so on and so forth. I think that's as much as I can take for now, but I'll respond to the many questions that have come in via email. So again, I'll just pull up my details on the screen, so feel free to take those and respond to me directly. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedules to log in and learn more about Revizto today. Hopefully you've enjoyed what you've seen and you'd like to test the software further. If that's the case, get in touch and keep your eyes peeled for the next webinar. Share this with your colleagues and any of the consultants you're working with. We'd love to welcome you all to this exciting journey that Revizto has been going through the past 5 years. So thank you very much for logging in today and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.